Basic Brewing Radio is sponsored in part by our good friends Desiree and Dave of HighGravityBrew.com. Their Warthog electric controllers and systems have been taking the pain out of propane since before electric brewing was cool. Hot. Now brewing electric at home is the way to go, and you can save $75 off a new Warthog controller or turnkey system by using the code EBC75BB at HighGravityBrew.com. Use the Build Your Own Brewing System feature on HighGravityBrew.com to create a system that is perfect for your brewing style. That's at family-owned and operated HighGravityBrew.com. That's HighGravityBrew.com. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, July 13th, 2023. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Mead Man Tim Leber leads us through an experiment on the best way to extract fruit flavor and character into our beers and meads. Tim pits three methods against each other: crushing the fruit, steam juicing the fruit, and simply adding the fruit to the fermenter. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Financial supporters will see this week the second video episode that Steve Wilkes and I shot while floating on a pond. It's about the Pond Hopper Golden Ale that Matt Giovanisi of Brew Cabin and I formulated on this show a while back. It's called Pond Hopper because we blended both the British and American ingredients to create the beer. I also added some table sugar in there just to see what effect that it would have. Financial supporters will see that video on Friday, along with a recipe and a behind-the-scenes video of how the beer came together on the patio. This week marks our 18th anniversary as a podcast. The podcast launched July 14th, 2005, a month after Apple created the iTunes podcast directory. I've said many times that I thought we'd get like 10 or 12 episodes done before we ran out of things to talk about. But this is show number 851 by my calculations. Many thanks to everybody who's been with us throughout the years, and especially huge thanks to everybody who has been on the show or contributed ideas or beers or in any other way. Y'all are awesome. Looking forward to what year number 19 brings. Whew, hey 19. This week also brings us some very sad news for the craft beer industry. Anchor Brewing in San Diego is closing down after 127 years. Fritz Maytag rescued the brewery back in the 60s and turned it into a craft beer icon. I remember drinking Anchor Steam Ale here in Northwest Arkansas as one of the first craft beers available to us. Old Foghorn was my first barley wine, and Anchor Small Beer came from the second runnings of that barley wine and was my first exposure to the theory of party guile brewing. Hearing of Anchor's closing made me want to revisit the California episode of Michael Jackson's Beer Hunter TV series that you can find on YouTube. Jackson, in that episode, spends a lot of time profiling Anchor and Fritz Maytag, and he also takes a bus trip with the Anchor crew and winds up at a pub interviewing Don Barkley, who we have met, about his time working at New Albion with Jack McAuliffe. Very sad news about Anchor. Maybe now, maybe other craft brewers can start calling their California common beers steam beer to carry on the legacy and to keep the spirit of Anchor alive. I told you last week that I hope to have my next beer in the fermenter by now. Well, more sad news kept that from happening. I went to my hometown this past weekend to spend time with a friend who had lost his mother. As is always the case, it's very sad to say goodbye to loved ones, but it's an opportunity to reconnect with friends and loved ones that you don't get to see as often when you get together for these things. It's sad to say. We took the opportunity in getting together to visit Superior Bathhouse Brewing and Squeezebox Brewing in Hot Springs, Arkansas, both of which are doing very well and were full of patrons, which is great news for local craft beer. So I'm hoping tomorrow to fire up the Wordhog system to brew the Honey Peach IPA that Chris Colby and I formulated in the last show. I have local honey in hand from beekeeper Caleb, who you've heard on this podcast and you've seen him on the video. I'm going to ferment the beer with the latest hybrid from Imperial Yeast, I-10 Mangostini. I-10 Mangostini is a natural combination of two different yeast strains. It's been developed for excellent attenuation, prompt reduction of diacetyl, and features a robust flavor profile of ripe tropical fruit, strawberry, and lychee. Or is it lychee? I think it depends on where you're from. That would go great in a big American IPA, I figure. And I think it would also go great with peach juice that I'm going to get from Steeman. I-10 Mangostini is not a GMO product. You've heard on this show, Dr. Matt Winans came on last year and told us about the method that Imperial uses to coax two different strains to combine their DNA naturally instead of, budding or cloning, which is what yeast normally does. In addition to innovation, Imperial is known for having a pitch rate of 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open package. My stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches, and my airlocks are usually bubbling before bedtime. Ask your local homebrew store about I-10 Mangostini and check out all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. Okay, if you're brewing a fruit beer or a fruit mead, melomels and the like, how do you get the best fruit character in your glass at the end of the process? Well, as you've heard on the show, Tim Leber has introduced us to steam juicing. But how does that compare to just, simply adding fruit to the fermenter or crushing the juice out of the fruit to extract the juice? Well, let's go back to a hotel room in San Diego during HomebrewCon to find out. Tim Leber, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you. It's good to be here again.
We're here in your room at HomebrewCon, as we tend to do. We tend to gather in hotel rooms just because it's convenient. Now, we have a special guest. Steve Wilkes, welcome.
Thank you.
And
I'll be playing the part of Floyd the barber today, because you're all standing and I'm seated.
Oh, yeah, such nice hair. Oh, Andy. Oh. Okay, so, and Tim, we have a special guest, first-timer.
Right, so this is my friend Michael Lowry. He's in my homebrew club up in Seattle, and we're splitting the hotel room, so come on in. Hello.
Yeah, welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And you go by Mike, right?
I do, yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we were introduced yesterday evening, but, my memory from yesterday evening may not be as accurate as what... What do we got here, Tim? We have 3 vessels in front of us, 3 cups. 2 look very kind of similar, but a little bit different, and 1 looks way different.
Yeah, so, we talked a lot about steam juicing, how I think it's, gives you more of the fruit character than whole fruit. And I decided I better do an experiment side by side so we can actually decide. So I did an experiment. One of these it's all the same fruit. It's 5 pounds of honey, 5 pounds of frozen blueberries from Costco, because that's a convenient size. It's a 10-liter batch. So, half the European listeners will be happy and the other half are going to be mad because I'm mixing units. But I steam juiced one. I did the other one with whole fruit in the primary. And the third one, I've got a little press that I use to press liquid out of dried fruits when I use those. And so I tried to press 5 pounds worth of blueberries, and I don't think I did it right. And blueberries, if you notice, you put them in the freezer, you bring them back out, they look exactly like they did when they went in. But like a blackberry, you put it in and you come out and it thaws and it's mush already. Mm-hmm. Blueberries hold their integrity, so the skins are tough. And I think I didn't treat the blueberries correctly in order to get the full press out of it, but I went ahead and brought it because we did the experiment, and this is a learning opportunity.
Yeah, and we don't know what the cups are literally labeled Manny, Mo, and Jack. But Mike, let's get to know you. Tell us about your background in brewing, and what do you like to brew, and kind of bring us up to speed on the world of Mike.
I've been homebrewing consistently for about 4 years now, and like to brew a lot of, I guess, pale ales and darker beer.
Well, there you go. He's a man of few words.
He is, but I'm trying to convert him to be a full-on mead maker, and this is part of that ongoing effort.
So how should we proceed? Shall we just taste them in order? The Manny, and then the Mo, and then the Jack?
I think we should go Manny, Mo, Jack, and then after we taste the first one, I can, after we go through them, because I think one, you're going to be able to know what it is right away, but the other two I kind of want to discuss the differences and maybe talk about it. But we can talk about what the different fermentation characteristics of the batches are based on what they are, and then you can guess, was Manny the steam juiced, or was Mo the steam juiced, or not? So that's what I would do, is we'd start with Manny and then work our way down. We could talk about the actual batches.
So Steve, tell us about what you're perceiving visually before we get into tasting.
I just see colors, man. I just see colors, and I brew art. But to be more specific, Manny is kind of a light. It is between Manny and Mo. Manny is lighter in color, kind of a purplish red, and then Mo is quite a bit darker. And then Jack, I don't know what the hell happened to him.
Jack just has a pinkish hue.
Yeah, Jack has a pinkish hue.
It is kind of like a pink, almost like a pink champagne, right?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
And I mean that's a pretty stark. I mean, no spoilers, but did you expect? We don't know which is which, but did you expect the three samples to look as different as they do?
Not when I started the experiment, but after I put the batches together, I knew. But again, it's a learning experience, and not everything works out the way you expect, and sometimes it's about damage control. And I decided there is a lesson to be learned, even with something that didn't quite work the way we expected, to be able to talk about it. And there was, when we talk about how the fermentation went, there were a lot of statistics that matched up. So we can taste it and see. But yeah, there is a very stark difference between one of the three samples.
So in the processing, we know that the fruit was in the fermenter. The other extraction methods, whether it was squished or steamed, were those also added at the same time in the process?
Everything was in the primary. Okay. So that's trying to keep those, as many variables as I can, together. Everything went in the primary together. Everything was roughly the same starting gravity or bricks, and they finished fairly close to each other. And then they were all carbonated, because I think the carbonation will help us pick up the differences. But I mean, so when you look at the statistics, you're like, hey, that's pretty close. What I got out of this was pretty close to this, so we'll go ahead and do it and see what we get. But blueberries, like I said, blueberries maintain structural integrity very, very well.
So do you have any assumptions going into this, Steve? I mean, you're a mead maker from way back. In looking at these, I have some guesses, but do you have any guesses or any perceived based on your experience, do you have an inkling of what's what?
A prognostication?
Yeah. You said that better than me.
I think that this is not tasted, not smelled, not touched. This is where I'm at. I think that Manny is the
Whole fruit.
Whole fruit. Mo is the steam juice, and Jack has been pressed.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
That's
Mike, do you have any guesses?
I agree entirely, actually.
Interesting. So shall we go one by one and taste? We'll taste Manny.
Start with Manny.
Cheers, everybody. We just got out of the toast, the opening toast, and there are people screaming. We're overlooking the pool, and people screaming outside, Some of us are going to go back to pro night, I guess, or what do they call it? The opening party now.
It's now the kickoff party, but it's pro night, people.
Steve and I may go get some ramen, but okay. Steve has had a sip.
It's very tasty. I'm curious, what was the yeast you used? Anything special about the honey? The mead's very well made, and it's definitely a nice blueberry mead. There's nothing at all wrong or weird about it. It's just a really nice little sparkling mead.
So everything was D254, and so we'll start with Manny. Started at 19.8 bricks, which is 1080 starting gravity. Finished at 8.8 bricks or 1007, so it's about 9.7% alcohol, and then I carbonated in the bottle. And then Mo started at 19 or 1076 and ended up at 0992, so it's about 11.2%. And then Jack started at 19.2 or 1077, ended at 7.2 or 0.999 for 10.4%. So like I said, the numbers were all fairly close, which is why I went ahead and proceeded with the experiment as originally designed, even though there's a marked visible difference between them all. Mm-hmm. But I think Manny has got it's got a good nose and it's got a lot of flavor.
It's nice and bright, and the fruit is really fresh.
Yeah, very well balanced.
That's my word. Yeah, it's really good. It's the fruit is delicate on the tongue, but it's very present. The effervescence is. Steve's. We have a new thing. Should we tell him about the thing? We should tell him about the thing.
Let's tell him.
Let's tell him. You remember? Okay, so we have 4 things that we say a lot. Number 1 is "That's what she said." Number 2 is that was my nickname in high school. Number 3 is "I dated her in college," and number 4 is "If I only had a nickel." So those are our 4 sayings, and so therefore, if you want to say "That's what she said," you hold up one finger, and on down the line. So Steve just held up 4 fingers, and I can't remember what the reference was. But that was "If I only had a nickel."
So, Mike, what do you think?
It is very well balanced. And it's actually a very pleasant honey aroma to it as well.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, the honey's definitely present. Very nice.
Yeah, it's not a seltzer. There's something other than just fruit and sparkling and alcohol and water. There is a nice, very good point, Mike. There's a nice sweet honey character without it being sweet itself. So the next one, the second one, is the darker colored one, and I took a picture for the Insta of Steve's samples. We can go ahead and sample these.
This is Mo.
Oh, and it is Mo. It is more. There's more of a fruit nose to it to me. I think that maybe my eyes are tricking me, but it seems to me that the fruit character is deeper, is darker, to go along with the color of the beverage.
I'd call it Mo Better Blueberry.
So is it just like more fruit?
Yeah, although I would say, at least in this sample, that Manny was much more carbonated. This one doesn't seem as carbonated to me, but I'm not blaming that on anything. But that is a difference. I mean, it's a perceived difference. But yeah, I think the fruit flavor is just more. It's just more present, and visually it's darker. I've brewed some blueberry meads in the past when they didn't come out looking like blueberries. Yeah. They came out looking more like Jack over here. Yeah. And it's like, well, it doesn't look like a blueberry. So this looks like a blueberry in a glass.
And tastes like blueberry. It's much more reminiscent of blueberry.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting a little spice. There's a little bit of a maybe I'm thinking a tannic, but it's a little bit of a maybe kind of a cinnamony kind of spice character. Does anybody else get that?
No, I definitely get more tannin. I actually like Manny better because I think Manny tastes it's not as tannic and it's more rounded than Mo. I mean, Mo's got a more of a fruit punch in your face, but I think Manny is better rounded and a nicer mead than Mo is. But we're splitting hairs. We do this a lot when we do this. Like both of these, if I gave anybody either one of these meads, they'd all go, "Oh, this is great," and they would never say, "Oh, well, you should have done whatever." We're splitting hairs. We're side by side, but that's what this is about: is splitting hairs and doing things side by side. So I think Mo is more tannic.
Do you think number one Manny is better than Mo or the other way, or not, or the same?
I like Manny better too, and I like it better because I feel like I get a little bit more of the honey character out of that one. And it just seems to have a little fuller. It has more dimensions. It just seems like it's a more realized mead.
Mike, do you have a favorite?
I would have to go with Manny as well. It tastes more like a mead. Mo is more of almost like a fruit wine flavor.
Yeah,
I can see that.
Well, we got one more, so we may all change our mind.
Now we have the pink, the one with the pinkish hue. I'm amazed at how different this one is. I mean, it almost looks like a beer.
Yeah, I mean, when I reveal what it is, there's a specific reason. Steve had a strong reaction to this, and I don't know if it's good or bad.
I'm not saying it. I haven't tasted it.
Oh, you just smelled it?
I just smelled it. I just smelled it.
You smelled it and you diddled it.
This is Jack, and you don't know Jack.
Is it a little off?
It smelled a little on the ripe side to me. Yeah. That's all I can say at the moment. I'm going to taste it now.
That was a little attempt at a naughty reference.
Well, when I opened them, Jack was very effervescent and actually pulled up some of the cookie off the bottom of the bottle as I poured. So I think there's going to be more yeast character in this than there is in the other two. But it is definitely more effervescent than the other two.
It's just less.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, the old Sesame Street song, one of these things is not like the others. You know, it doesn't belong. Jack doesn't belong. They didn't give him an M name. He's the stepchild of the family.
Yeah, that's
That's not working for me.
To me, I get spice without the fruit.
Yeah.
This is the La Croix of blueberry mead.
The sparkling water. That's a good reference.
With the kiss of fruit, which basically means we waved a blueberry over the batch and called it blueberry. No. So.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's not good.
It's nobody's favorite.
No, it's not. I would even say it's just. I mean, the first two are delicious in different ways. Right. That third one's just like, ugh, no.
And like I said, when I tell you what each one was, I think there's a good reason why the third one is the way it is.
We're talking meads, and that makes me want to talk about our friends and sponsors, Ricky and Kelly from Groenfell and Havoc Meaderies in Vermont. They're having some horrible flooding in Vermont, but I got an email from the meadery saying that they're okay, and they're out of the flood zone now, so that's good news. But since we're talking about fruited meads this week, I wanted to draw your attention to Be Proud Orange Cassis Mead by Havoc. It's inspired by the classic Cassis Orange Cocktail and is a sour mead made with black currant and orange juice. It's part of Groenfell and Havoc's annual Pride celebration. A portion of the proceeds from Be Proud is going to support the Pride Center of Vermont. Be Proud has a red-orange color, not unlike a vintage lava lamp, they say, a fresh orange peel aroma, and the flavor is a tour de force of Brett character with red fruit, orange, and honey. At only 5.8% ABV, it's perfect to brighten up a steamy, summer day on the porch or dock. Check out Be Proud, B-E-E Proud, and all the other honey-based deliciousness at family-owned and operated Groenfell.com. That's Groennfell. Okay, so remind me, Steve, and Mike, you agreed, which methods that you think each was?
So Manny is the standard. Gee, me Christmas, just
Whole fruit.
Whole fruit, yeah. And then Mo has been steam juiced, and then this one was pressed.
The Jack, which is the Well,
but I don't know. I have no idea if I'm right or not.
Yeah.
I mean, none.
Yeah. Well, I would go with that. But you would think that physically pressing the fruit, the blueberry, you think that physically pressing it, I mean, that's the way they get wine, is, they physically press the fruit of the wine to extract the juice.
Yeah. So,
So are we ready to reveal?
I'm ready to reveal. So we're gonna start with the worst case. So Jack was the pressed, and I believe what's going on with Jack is there's not a lot of contact time between the skin and the fermentation, so it's not pulling out the anthocyanins and the color. Right. And a lot of blueberry flavors actually in the skin, not in the flesh of the fruit. So we got a lot of juice out of it. The juice was deep and rich and purple.
Really?
But when you dilute it to 10 liters, it ends up with this light pink color, and it was in the middle. I mean, it had a decent, gravity contribution from the juice. It just, there wasn't that contact time with the skins, so you lost the aroma and the tannins and things that the other two have.
So it's the white wine of blueberry mead.
Yeah, basically. And, I would, 1 out of 10 not recommend that you make a blueberry mead like this. But again, I wanted to do the experiment to see, so we could see. And I think it's a very visible difference. Now, I think maybe if you, crush the blueberries good and put them in the mash, in the must for a while, and you let them cold soak for a couple of days, and then did a press, like people do orange wines or red wines, I think you'd get a lot more flavor and a lot more color out of it. But in this application of just press the thawed frozen blueberries and put them in, it's not a good application for blueberries. So
Interesting. I have nothing to add.
I'm surprised. I would, before I saw these, I would have thought that squishing berries would be a good way to get the good parts of the fruit.
No, but it makes perfect sense because, for instance, Champagne is very typically made, or one of the primary grapes in Champagne tends to be Pinot Noir, which makes if you make the wine on the skins, Pinot Noir is a red wine, and a really good red wine. Champagne is a really nice white sparkling wine made with a Pinot Noir grape.
Right.
Completely different.
Right. Do you have any wine background, Mike?
I do not. But I am curious if the lees contained any of the purple color that didn't make it into the mead.
Ooh, good question.
the lees of this batch were not appreciably purple. So there wasn't a lot of color in it. The lees were about the same color as the batch. I really think it's a lack of contact time between the skins and the fermentation, which again is instructive. You know, it's not what I intended. It's not what I was thinking, but I think that's very important information for people to have learned and then to share out with people. If you're going to make a mead with a dark berry like this, you need to have that skin contact time in order to get that character.
So, was Steve, of the remaining two, was Steve correct that the darker one was the steam juiced?
I'm sorry, it's 1 out of 3, so it's pretty good for baseball.
Oh, I knew that was. I just knew I was going to be wrong because we liked that one better.
Number one.
Okay, number one, Manny.
Lighter.
Yeah.
So the darker one, which, and we've had experience, very limited experience with steam juicing, and when you steam juice stuff, the juice that comes out is very dark, and it's thick and sweet and concentrated.
Well, I was going to say, so my very limited steam juicing thing was when we did the mulberry thing, and I made a mulberry mead, and I was shocked at how rich and full that mead was. And so just visually I went, well, that's got to be it. Mm-hmm. But the Manny had the best flavor. It was the most well realized, the best example of a blueberry mead of the three. So I'm not at all surprised that this is the juice one, even though it's the one I picked wrong.
So the Manny, again, is the first one, and that is the steam juiced, and that is the room favorite.
Yeah, we all preferred the Manny. Some folks thought that Mo was the steam juiced one, but going back to skin contact time, Mo had the most skin contact time. So we talked about it being a little more tannic, a little more acidic, so it had that darker color. Manny pulled a lot of that's flavor and stuff and color out of the skin during the steam juicing process, but Mo had more contact time, so I think it got more of that. But my opinion is Manny, the steam juiced mead, is more well-rounded. It's a better mead. They're both very good. Mm-hmm. Either one of them is a fine technique. But if you're looking to get a true expression of the fruit, I am leaning towards you really need to steam juice, or you need to do a cold soak and a press. And that's something I'll have to try at some point in the future. But definitely, whole fruit in the primary is almost as good as steam juicing. And if you don't want to steam juice, you're not really losing much. But I think if you don't want to have the space and the mess of having, and I lost, even though I had adjusted volumes and everything, I lost a fair amount of volume to sediment on the bottom in the whole fruit mead.
Good point.
So these were all 10-liter batches. I only got 9 liters out of the whole fruit one. But everything else came out as 10 liters. So I got better control, better yield, less mess, less sediment, less wastage out of the steam juicing one. So again, I am leaning towards, this as being a preferred process.
Well, I definitely like Manny the best.
The first one, the steam juice.
Yeah, the steam juice one. I think it's again, like you said, we're splitting hairs, but I think it's quite a bit superior to the other. Definitely superior to Jack, but to the Mo version of it, I think that Manny or the steam juice one is significantly better mead.
Now, what about the numbers? Because one thing that, when we were talking about steam juicing, one of my questions was, well, you're using steam to extract the juice from the fruit. Doesn't the steam is water? Doesn't the steam dissolve or dilute the juice? So what do the numbers say?
So again, the highest bricks was the steam juice one. It was 19.8 at 10 liters. It also finished higher than the rest. So I think it had more extra stuff in it, because we all think of specific gravity as strictly sugar, but it's not. There's a lot of other stuff that contributes to the specific gravity. And it had the lowest ABV. So started higher, finished higher, ABV of lower. And then Manny was, Mo was right there together, but it finished a lot lower. And it was almost 1.5% higher in alcohol than the steam juiced version. So again, I think steam juicing gives you things out of the fruit that you're not going to get based on just, mashing up the fruit and sticking it in the primary.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about, or do you want to say something, Mike?
I have nothing at the moment.
Okay. Don't be shy. Now this is a mead, but the same information can be applied to beer as well.
Yeah, I think it's an ideal way for beer brewers to make a fruit beer, because what you end up with is a known volume at a known specific gravity that you can then add to your beer to get a specific effect. So if I'm going to have I have this much fruit and I'm going to end up with this many ounces of juice at this specific gravity, and I want to make a beer that is 5.5%. You can do that math. You can say, okay, I'm going to have this contribution from the fruit juice at this volume, so I need to put in the fermenter this volume of green beer at this gravity in order to get that together to become what you want. So it's much easier to know exactly because you have that fruit off of specific gravity off the fruit afterwards. And steam juicing sanitizes your fruit juice. So you can steam juice on Friday night or Saturday and have your juice, put it in the fridge, and know what you've got, and then brew your beer on the next day when you already have all that established, or have it on hand to throw in the secondary or in the keg or whatnot. But you know exactly what that is, and when you use whole fruit, you don't really know, because you can squish one or two pieces of fruit, but you're not going to get an accurate read of what the bricks of the entire or physically of the entire fruit charge is.
So if you're worried about your beer or mead getting funky, treating it with steam can it's not sterilizing, but maybe it's sanitizing, maybe it's pasteurizing the fruit, so you don't have to worry about that. It apparently does not have an effect on the character of the fruit itself, because it tastes delicious and it was our favorite. So I don't know. Are there any negatives that of the steam juicing that you could say that would cause anybody some pause?
All right. So something I've seen online since we started talking about steam juicing is people go, "Well, I didn't get hardly any juice out of the steam. I steam juiced so much all this fruit. I didn't get anything out of it." Well, when you go back and look at the fruit that they steam juiced and the amount they say they got, that's right on target. So you really need to get familiar with these Department of Agriculture tables that tell you the water percentage in your fruit. Otherwise you're not going to get what you need to know what you're going to get on the other end, because it's not like having 5 pounds of blueberries and then you leave it in there long enough and it keeps extracting flavor. You're going to end up with a specific amount of juice at the end, and that's going to tell you something. And it's not sanitary. It'll hold in the fridge a couple, 3 days while you do other stuff, but it is not going to hold forever. It isn't, so you need to think about those things. But I think the number one thing is you need to think about how much water content, because that's what the Department of Agriculture tells you is the typical water content in the fruit, which translates to juice. What is the water content in that juice? What is that? And I subtract 5% off of that. So if it says it's 85%, I count on getting 80% of the weight of the fruit out as juice. And then how many milliliters or ounces is that versus what I need? And that's what you work from, as opposed to a lot of places like, well, I'm just going to throw 5 pounds of fruit in there or whatnot, and you play like that. You get a lot more color, you get a lot more fruit concentration out of it, but you have to know what you're dealing with in terms of what you're going to get. Otherwise, you're going to be disappointed. I mean, you guys were disappointed. You had a small amount of blackberries you juiced, and you were disappointed at the amount of juice. But when I looked at your yield versus what the fruit you had and the amount of fruit you had, you were right on target.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had a listener who wrote in and said, if you actually do the weight, you did good. It's just that the shape. I think it was the shape of the fruit, and the mulberries, all compacted together, and it appeared, it was just a different animal. Well, this is really instructive and interesting. And Mike has raised his hand.
I wonder if ripeness has any difference in the actual yield you get from the fruit.
Oh, 100%. Because a ripe fruit is going to have more juice, and it's going to have more things that you can extract. If green fruit or fruit that isn't quite ripe will have less juice in it. Also, fruit that is old, you may get more juice out of, but you're then running into all kinds of other problems because it's going off. So, perfect ideal fruit. And if you don't live in a place where you can get great fruit, there was a couple of different talks today that referenced if you can't get the best ripe, fruit at the farmer's market, go buy it frozen, because what's in the grocery store fresh is there for stability and color and presentation. What they grow to freeze generally goes to food manufacturers who want it to still taste like blackberries after they've made it into jam or they've made it into a pie or whatnot. So those fruits are selected more for flavor, and ripeness. But Ken Schramm's doing a whole thing about the perfect fruit. But so that if you can't get it fresh and you don't like it fresh, buy some frozen. But again, do the math. It's not that hard,
Final thoughts.
I'm old.
Not that final.
Well, this is once again, it just reinforces my whole the whole epiphany of steam juicing. So this side by side reinforced everything that we have thought, to this point after Tim introducing us to this technique, and it's great. I've got about 3 gallons of wild persimmons I'm going to go home and steam, in a week or two. We'll see what we get.
Inspired by your peach mead of our previous conversation, I'm gonna add some peach juice to a hoppy IPA. So, Mike, final thoughts.
I need to find a steam juicer and to top up my cup of Manny.
Oh yeah. This podcast brought to you by the American Steam Juicer Association.
Exactly. I need an associate link on Amazon for steam juicers.
Exactly.
If you're listening to Amazon, I do, happily accept credit.
All right. Well, Tim, thanks again for a wonderful experiment, and we've learned a lot, and we've tasted some delicious mead. So thanks for joining us again.
Thank you very much.
And Steve and Mike, thanks for helping to evaluate.
Thanks for letting me tag along.
Well, thanks again to Tim, to Steve, and Mike. I have to admit, I was pretty clueless. But after knowing the results, it makes perfect sense. It's all about contact time with the fruit and the skins. So your preference may depend on the kind of character that you want in your beer or mead in the end. Want to enhance the flavor of the skins and get more, tannins? Use the whole fruit. You want less of that tannic character? Steam juice. And apparently want to waste your time and money? Crush the fruit. That's just a joke. Just a joke. I'm sure there are fruit crushers out there who have excellent results. And if you're one of them, please drop me a line and let me know about your experience. Defend the crushing. I have an open mind on the crushing. If maybe an excuse to buy another thing. Honey, we got to make room for the fruit crusher thing. If in the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Till then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. Talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.